The sky was quiet. The stars above the small earth farm blinked like old lanterns. The wind moved through the cornfields, and the night was cold. Thomas Reed, an old man with rough hands and tired eyes, sat on his wooden porch sipping tea. His dog, Rusty, lay beside him snoring. Then, without warning, boom! A flash of light tore across the sky. It was not lightning. It was not a shooting star. It was falling. Thomas stood up fast. Something had crashed in the northern field. He grabbed his old flashlight and shotgun and rushed across the dark land, Rusty barking beside him. When he reached the field, he stopped. His eyes widened. There, half buried, in dirt and broken crops, was a small silver pod smoking and glowing faintly. The metal was smooth, unlike anything human. One side opened slowly, hissing. From the smoke, a figure crawled out. Then another, smaller one behind it. Thomas stepped back, his finger on the trigger. But then he saw the truth. It wasn't soldiers or monsters. It was a girl. Not human. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes glowing soft green. She held a young boy in her arms, no older than 6. Both were bruised, shaking, and barefoot. The woman looked at Thomas. Her lips moved. Only one word came out. Banished. And then she collapsed. Thomas stared, frozen. The boy held his mother tight, staring at Thomas with glowing, scared eyes. Thomas lowered his shotgun. "Come on, then," he whispered. "We'll figure this out." He carried the alien girl, light as a feather, and led the boy back to his old barn. It smelled of hay, dust, and age, but it was warm. He laid her on some old blankets and turned on a heater. The boy sat close, watching everything. Hours passed. The girl finally woke. She tried to stand, but groaned in pain. Thomas knelt nearby, holding out a cup of water. "Don't worry," he said softly. "You're safe now." She looked at him with caution. "You are human. Earthborn?" "Yes," he nodded. "And you are—" She held her chest, wincing, then said, "Salia." She placed her hand on the boy's back. "My son, Rune." Thomas looked at the child. His skin shimmered slightly, and his small fingers curled around a strange necklace. "What happened to you?" Salia's voice was low. "My clan exiled us. They said my son was a danger." "Why?" She looked away. "Because he's different. Because he sees what others don't." Thomas didn't understand it all, but he understood fear and loneliness. "You can stay here," he said, "just until you figure out what comes next." The next morning, Thomas gave them food, simple bread and soup. Rune ate quickly, his eyes wide with wonder at everything around him. Salia ate little, still, watching the door like someone expecting to be hunted. Thomas cleaned the crash site and dragged the pod into an old shed. He told no one, not the sheriff, not the neighbors. He didn't need the government poking around. That night, while Salia and Rune slept in the barn, Thomas sat again on his porch. He looked at the stars. What kind of people would throw away a mother and her boy? He whispered. Rusty sat beside him, ears perked. The wind blew through the field again, but this time Thomas felt something else riding on it. Not fear, not danger, just a feeling that life on this quiet farm was about to change forever. The barn was old but quiet. The wind howled outside, but inside, the air was still. Dust floated in the golden morning light. Salia sat on a bundle of blankets, watching her son Rune play in the straw with Thomas's dog Rusty. The boy didn't speak much, but his smile came easily now. He was safe. For the moment. Thomas Reed leaned against the barn door, arms crossed, silent. He had questions, but he didn't want to push too fast. Still, the longer Salia stayed, the more he needed answers. Finally, he spoke. "You said you were banished. What for?" Salia didn't answer at first. Her eyes stayed on her son. Then she whispered, voice tight, Because I protected my child instead of obeying my clan. She stood slowly, stepping closer to Thomas. My people. They are called the Vishari. Honor and bloodlines matter more to them than life itself. My son was born during a storm cycle. The elders claimed he had storm-marked eyes, that he would bring imbalance. They ordered me to give him to the flame. Thomas blinked. What's the flame? A burning pit where they throw those who don't fit. His face went pale. And you? Ran? She nodded. I stole a scout pod, fled their orbit. They tracked us and fired. I aimed for the darkest corner I could find, your world. I thought Earth was full of violence and war. But you, she looked at him now. You offered us shelter with no questions. Thomas rubbed his neck, uneasy. Well, I've been alone too long. Maybe I needed you as much as you needed me. Just then, Rune laughed. A butterfly had landed on his hand. But then something strange happened. The insect glowed, just for a second, and the withered grass beneath his feet turned green. Fresh. Thomas stared. Did he just make that plant grow? Salia walked over and knelt beside Rune, gently touching his shoulder. His gifts are waking up. In our world, power like this is feared. But here, maybe it can be understood. Thomas crouched beside her. Lady, I'm just a farmer. I don't understand much. But I know what it's like, to be told you're not welcome. He paused. This barn is yours now, and the house too if you need it. Salia looked surprised. Why would you do this? You owe us nothing. He smiled softly. Sometimes doing the right thing doesn't need a reason. That night after supper, Thomas gave Rune a small wooden horse. It had been carved by his late wife long ago. Rune held it gently, eyes wide. You remind me of someone I lost, Thomas said, his voice cracking. She would have loved you both. Later, Thomas went outside and looked up at the stars again, but this time he wasn't alone. Salia stood beside him, arms wrapped around herself. She didn't say a word, but her silence felt like thanks. Suddenly, far above, a flicker of red light blinked in the night sky. Not a star, not a plane. Salia saw it too. Her voice went cold. They found us. The sky was no longer still. For 3 nights in a row, Thomas Reed stood in his fields and watched strange lights hover far above the earth. They didn't move like planes. They didn't blink like stars. They watched, and they were getting closer. Inside, the barn, Salia prepared. Her calm voice had turned sharp. Her green eyes didn't blink as she taught her son Rune how to remain silent when danger came. She sharpened her broken blade with slow, steady hands. They won't ask questions, she told Thomas. They'll burn the ground until we're gone. Thomas had lived through one war long ago. He never thought he'd prepare for another, with an alien woman and child under his roof. But something in him had changed. He cleaned out the barn's hidden root cellar and stocked it with food. He powered up the old defense grid his brother once joked about. He even rewired his late wife's weather drone to act as a sky watcher. I'm no soldier anymore, he said to Salia, but I'll die standing if I have to. On the 4th day, the silence broke. At noon, the clouds split. A sleek black Vishari dropship descended over the cornfield. It made no sound, but the wind it brought knocked over fences and trees. Rusty barked and ran in circles, confused and afraid. The ship opened like a flower of metal and light, and from it stepped 2 armored warriors, tall, cold, and marked with the sigils of the High Clan. One of them held a scanner. Life signs detected, he said. Half-blood signal confirmed. The child is here. Thomas watched them through his old binoculars. He grabbed his shotgun and turned to Salia. They're not here to talk, she nodded. If they reach my son, they'll take him and burn the rest. Why? Because a child with power but no clan is a threat to every throne in the Vishari system. Thomas opened the barn's trapdoor. Get in. Stay with Rune. If I don't come back... Don't finish that sentence, Salia said quickly. You're coming back. The Vishari scanned the house first. They spoke in a cold, buzzing language. When they found nothing inside, they spread out toward the barn. But they didn't notice the motion detector planted in the field. Not until it was too late. Boom! The old defense grid roared to life. An arc of electric wire surged across the field, shocking the ground with high-voltage fury. One Vishari soldier dropped. The other spun around and fired, straight at Thomas. The blast missed by inches. Thomas rolled behind the tractor and fired his shotgun once, then twice. The second shot hit the warrior's shoulder, knocking him back. The alien growled in pain, sparks flying from his armor, but he wasn't dead. Suddenly, a scream. Not from Thomas. Not from Salia. From Rune. A sharp, echoing cry from below the barn that made the air ripple. Everything stopped. Even the Vishari. Birds flew from trees. The grass moved like waves. And from the crack in the barn floor, green light glowed upward. The standing warrior froze. He whispered into his comm, "The boy has awakened. Notify the ship, he's beginning the blooming. We must extract him now." But before he could move, a shadow dropped from the roof. Salia. She landed hard, her blade cutting fast. Clean, direct. The warrior fell to the dirt, motionless. Thomas stood in the quiet again, breathing heavy, staring at the burning field. Then he looked at Salia, her silver skin shining with sweat and dirt. "This was just the first wave," she said. "The others will come." Thomas looked at the barn where Rune's glowing green light still pulsed from below. "Let them," he whispered. "I've got more traps to lay." The barn was quiet. Again, but not peaceful. In the shadows below the floor, green light still glowed, soft, pulsing, alive. Rune sat on the cold earth, his knees pulled to his chest, eyes wide and shining. The boy wasn't crying. He wasn't afraid. He was listening. To something no one else could hear. Above, Thomas stood next to Salia, watching through the trapdoor. "He hasn't moved since the scream," Thomas said quietly. "What's happening to him?" Salia's voice was tense but calm. "His blooming has begun. It is the moment a gifted Vishari child connects to his source of power. If he survives it." Thomas blinked. "Survives it?" She nodded. "The energy inside him is pure, ancient. If it becomes too much, it can burn his mind. Some children never come back." Thomas looked at her, his heart heavy. "Not on my farm, not this boy." Later that day, strange things started happening. The broken windmill in the east field began turning on its own. The wilted vegetables in Thomas's garden suddenly bloomed, as if spring had returned. Rusty, the old dog, who had gone blind, 2 years ago began to chase birds again. Thomas stared at all of it, and in the middle of the strange miracles was one child, Rune. He walked into the kitchen that evening and touched a cracked cup. The crack vanished. He turned to Thomas and said his first full sentence since arriving. "You are sad. Inside. I can feel it." Thomas froze. The boy continued. "She died. The woman in the pictures." Thomas nodded slowly. "Yes, my wife, long ago." Rune stepped forward, small hand reaching out. "But you are not alone anymore." Later, Salia sat outside under the stars, staring at the sky. Thomas joined her, carrying a warm blanket. "Your son, he's not just special. He's a miracle." Salia didn't smile. "That's the problem," she said. "To the Vishari High Council, miracles are threats. They will come again, and this time, not just 2 soldiers. The next morning, a drone flew over the property, not human-made. It scanned the area and zoomed in on Rune. He looked up at it, calm. Then, without touching anything, the drone cracked apart in mid-air and dropped to the ground in smoking pieces. Thomas ran outside. "Did you do that?" Rune just blinked. It was looking at us wrong. Inside the farmhouse, a message flickered onto Salia's portable device. "Warning. Priority capture order activated. Vishari strike group en route, Thomas." Read the screen and stepped back. How many are coming? Celia answered in a whisper. Enough to burn half this continent if they must. Thomas looked down at Rune, who was calmly eating jam on toast. He sighed. Then I better fix the tractor's missile launcher. Celia frowned. What? Don't worry, Thomas said. It only works once, but it makes a loud point. But even he knew this wasn't just about protecting a child anymore. This was a war over what that child meant. And Thomas, an old man with broken tools and an open heart, had somehow become Earth's first protector of an alien hope. The wind changed. It carried heat, smoke, and the deep, distant hum of something unnatural. Thomas Reed stood at the edge of his cornfield, squinting at the sky. Above, dark clouds weren't just weather. They were ships, Vishari warships, 3 of them descending like predators. Inside the barn, Celia packed a small bag of energy packs, tools, and a single thin blade, black and glowing along the edges. She handed it to Rune, who looked up at her with wide eyes. I don't want to fight, he whispered. She knelt in front of him, touching his cheek. You don't have to fight. Just survive. Thomas entered, loading an old Earth-made plasma shotgun. The outer sensors are fried. They're blocking signals. We're blind, Celia nodded. Then we listen with instinct. Rune stood quietly behind them. He placed his small hand on the barn wall. A green wave rippled through the wood like water. They are here, he said, and they are angry. Then, without warning, boom! The first Vishari blast hit the north field. Dirt flew. Trees snapped. The earth shook. Rusty barked wildly and ran into the cellar. Thomas grabbed Rune's hand and shouted, Get to the shelter! Now! Celia didn't run. She stepped out into the open, her eyes glowing bright green, her silver skin reflecting the fire. 3 Vishari warriors dropped from the ship above, landing like shadows, tall, armored, deadly. The lead one stepped forward. Celia of Clan Irvek, he said coldly. You broke sacred code. Return the child. Your death will be painless. She drew her blade. He is no longer yours to judge. He belongs to no throne. The warriors attacked. The field, lit up with green fire and plasma blasts. Celia moved fast, like a dancer in a storm. She spun through cornstalks, cutting one soldier down with her blade. The second hit her shoulder with a blast. She fell to her knees but rolled back up, swinging her blade in an arc. Blood hit the dirt. But it wasn't hers. From behind the tractor, Thomas fired once. Boom. And 1 Vishari dropped. The recoil knocked him back, but he gritted his teeth. You mess with one of mine, you mess with all of me, he growled. Inside the cellar, Rune sat alone, hands shaking. He heard his mother scream. He heard Thomas shout. And then, silence. He stood up, and the ground listened. Above, the final Vishari soldier stood over Celia, blade raised. She was too slow to block. Her arm was bleeding, her body weak. Then, the earth cracked. Green light exploded from the ground like roots, reaching for the sky. The soldier flew backward, screaming, trapped in vines made of energy. Rune rose from the cellar, floating inches above the ground. His voice echoed, not loud, but heavy. Stop! The flames died. The air calmed. Even the ship above began to shake. Inside, Vishari pilot screamed over controls. The system is reacting. It's him, the boy. He's in bloom. And then the ship powered down, completely. Thomas stood, staring, at the glowing boy. Rune slowly lowered to the dirt and walked to his mother, who reached for him with wide, tired eyes. You're not a danger, she whispered. You're a gift. But Thomas looked at the silent sky and knew something else. They'll come back, he said, with more fire, bigger ships, and worse intentions. Because now they're afraid. Rune looked at him. Then we show them, he said quietly. That Earth is not afraid of them either. The fires had gone cold. The field was silent. But no one felt safe. Inside the farmhouse, Rune sat near the window, his small hands folded in his lap. The green glow around his body had faded, but something inside him had changed. He wasn't just a scared child anymore, he had power. Across the room, Thomas poured hot water into 3 cups. His hand trembled slightly, half from age, half from what he had just witnessed. The boy had stopped a ship, turned warriors into dust, made the earth itself obey him. "I've seen war," Thomas muttered, "but I've never seen anything like that." Celia stood near the door, her arms crossed. She had cleaned her wounds. Her silver skin was bruised. Her eyes were darker than before. "They'll return," she said. "Not to capture, not to threaten. This time, they'll destroy everything to erase him." She looked at Rune. "Unless he gives himself up." "The room went quiet. Rune didn't move. He didn't cry. He just asked softly, "If I go, will the war end?" Thomas knelt beside him. "Son, this isn't your fault. It never was. Giving yourself up won't make them stop fearing you. It'll only teach them that fear works." Celia walked closer. She knelt too, brushing her fingers through her son's soft, white hair. "I didn't run from our people to watch you walk into their hands. But this isn't my choice anymore. It's yours." Outside, a voice echoed across the land, loud, cold, artificial. "Child of Blooming, this is Commander Virel of the High Vishari Order. You have until the sun sets. Surrender, or we erase this land and all who protect you." Thomas stood, fire in his eyes. "That's not a choice, that's a threat." But Rune stood too. He looked between them. "What if I didn't go to them? What if they came to me?" Thomas blinked. "What do you mean?" "They expect a child," Rune said. "Someone weak, someone afraid." He walked toward the door. "Let them meet what I've become." As the sun began to fall, Rune stepped outside. He stood at the edge of the field, hands open, eyes calm. From the sky, a massive shadow appeared, a true Vishari war cruiser. It blocked out the light. Rune didn't flinch. From the cruiser, a single pod dropped, sleek, black, deadly. It landed with a hiss. Out stepped Commander Virel, clad in shining armor, face cold as steel. He stared at the boy. "So you've chosen death." Rune tilted his head. "No, I've chosen truth." He raised one hand, and the ground answered. Vines of light rose from the dirt. The broken trees reformed. Every fallen piece of the field stood tall again. Behind him, Thomas and Celia appeared, standing like guardians. "This land accepts me," Rune said, "because it listens, not because it fears." Virel hesitated. This wasn't the child he expected. This was something greater. A voice came through, his calm, "Commander, should we proceed with fire?" He stared at the boy, his fingers curled, but something inside him cracked. He turned and walked back into the pod. No blast came. No war began. Just silence. And then the ship left. Thomas breathed out. Celia fell, to her knees, shaking. Rune turned and walked back, silent, tired. Thomas opened his arms. The boy collapsed into them. "You didn't win a battle today," Thomas whispered. "You ended one." The warship was gone. The sky was clear again. But something deeper had changed. Not the sky, but the people under it. Thomas Reed sat on his porch like he always had, but this time there were 2 extra chairs. In one sat Celia, her silver skin now soft in the morning light. In the other, Rune, asleep, head resting on her shoulder. For the first time in many years, the farm was quiet, but not empty. Thomas sipped his tea, then broke the silence. "So, what happens now?" Celia didn't answer right away. She watched the wind pass through the cornfield, eyes distant. "The council won't come again, not after what they saw. They'll pretend this never happened." Thomas smiled faintly. Then we'll keep living. Quietly. A bird landed on the porch rail. Rune stirred, blinking slowly. Are we safe now? He asked, voice gentle. Thomas nodded. You're safer than most folks in the galaxy. Rune leaned against him. You feel like home. That hit Thomas. Harder than any blast ever could. For years he had lived in silence. First, he lost his brother, then his wife, then himself. But now, a boy with glowing eyes called him home. Later that afternoon, Thomas showed Rune how to feed the chickens. They laughed when one pecked his boot. In the barn, Salia quietly rebuilt a part of her pod. Not to leave, but to protect. We're not running anymore, she said aloud. This is where we grow. 1 week passed, then 2. Life slowed, healed. One day, a stranger came down the dirt road, a human girl in a university uniform holding a data pad. We picked up strange energy readings weeks ago, she said. Anything unusual out here, sir? Thomas raised a brow. Just me, some crops, and the best family I ever found. The girl smiled and left. She never saw the faint shimmer in Rune's eyes watching from the barn. That night Thomas stood under the stars again, this time not alone. Salia stood beside him. Rune sat on the porch, drawing stars in the dirt with a stick. I'm not a warrior anymore, Salia said. I'm not a leader, not a queen. Thomas nodded. That's fine, I'm not much of a farmer anymore either. She looked at him, smiling. Then what are we? He looked back at her, then at Rune. We're what comes after the fire. Behind them, the barn lights glowed warm. Rune laughed as Rusty chased fireflies, and the stars, once cold and distant, now felt like witnesses, not to a war, but to a beginning.